Welcome to Above Replacement Radio. I am your host, Chris Gianta. I might be becoming a bad baseball fan who can't enjoy the romantic things because of advanced statistics. 15 years from now, I want to be on the early baseball committee. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran.
I literally have the Fangraphs hoodie, the baseball reference t-shirt, just repping some stats, you know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily above average, but we can guarantee you we are better than just the standard replacement level college sophomore.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. We have 2 weeks left in the regular season now, and the playoff race looks as good as ever. The NL wildcard especially obviously looks awesome. There's going to be a lot of standings talk on this show for the next 2 weeks, and I'm very excited for it because this is a race with this much depth that we really haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, on really all sides of the spectrum. I mean, there's so many races that just haven't reached anywhere near a conclusion. AL East, AL West, and then the AL wild card and NL wild card are all, completely up in the air. So it's really nice to see. I think, last year we had the situation where by game 162, everything was set in stone. So, the likelihood that we have that resolved by game 162 is unlikely at this point.
Yeah, it seems unlikely. All it takes is for 2 games of separation, which is not a crazy amount, but it looks like down the stretch there's going to be a lot of fun with standings watching, and we'll get into some teams that have been kind of struggling their way out of that race, or maybe even back into that race today. But we got some breaking news this morning. I'll just get into it. The Tampa Bay Rays, who have been on a 16-year search for a new stadium, have finally signed an agreement where they will have a new 30,000 seat stadium in St. Petersburg, Florida. It looks a lot nicer than Tropicana Field. It's a dome stadium that has this might not be the best idea for Florida, but it has a glass roof, it looks like. And it's going to be a lot prettier, no doubt. But Chris, what were your initial thoughts on this?
I didn't really know what to think of this. What struck me first of all was it's St. Petersburg and not Tampa Bay or somewhere that's, very close to Tampa Bay, unfortunately. And I know that was an issue. That's an issue that's been talked about, is the fact that St. Petersburg is like an hour away from Tampa Bay. So it takes away from that attraction for, people from the city. So, that kind of, struck me a little bit. And I can't fully buy into the plan. Like in the article that I read on the Tampa Bay Times, it said that team officials were saying this should increase attendance and increase revenue and increase, player payroll. And I'm not completely sold that it's going to increase attendance necessarily, considering the location. I guess it's downtown Petersburg, or downtown St. Petersburg, so maybe it's going to be more popular within that area. But yeah, I'm not completely sold on it. At least, I guess at least there won't be catwalks or anything, and it'll be more aesthetically pleasing. But as far as people attending, I think I'm not sure. I'm not sold on the effect of this stadium.
Yeah, I think the number one takeaway to have with this is that this doesn't fix the problem, but it makes it seem a lot smaller, because the issue, as people have known with Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg, is that not only is St. Petersburg an hour away from Tampa, but there's one bridge that connects the two cities. So even if you're trying to get from Tampa Bay to St. Petersburg, it's not super accessible because, like I said, there's not a lot of routes to go. And I'm sure that bridge is probably clogged with traffic at every single moment of every day. Because, it's like the two are separated by a large body of water. So it's not easy to get from one to the other. So it's, it's not like I'm sure maybe there's like a ferry or something, but still, that's kind of a ridiculous mode of transportation if you're going to a baseball game. As far as attendance goes, I think this will again make the problem look a lot smaller because the capacity of Tropicana Field is 42,000 seats, and the capacity of this new place is 30,000 seats. So when you have, an average attendance of 15,000 fans per game, it looks a lot better when there's, it's 15,000 out of 30,000 instead of 15,000 divided by 42,000. So the stadium will look a lot more full. It'll look like there's more people coming to see the team because there's less empty seats, but in reality there's just less seats in general. So, I don't think, I think attendance percentage will skyrocket, but attendance overall in total volume is not going to look as good. Or it's going to look
Right.
the same rather.
Yeah, it might be half full as opposed to a third full, but
Mhm.
same total number of people going and spending on tickets, and maybe maybe the ticket prices will be more expensive because it is a new stadium,
And
so
it's a lot
there
prettier,
is
it looks
that.
like. Yeah.
That that'll most likely happen. As far as like just from a player's perspective, it'll probably be good from a player's perspective. I imagine it won't have all the weird nuts and bolts of Tropicana Field, like the catwalk, obviously, and the white roof that really just
Yeah.
throws everybody off and that nobody enjoys. So I mean, I guess that'll be a plus. The quality of baseball played in that stadium will be slightly better because there won't be that those weird nooks and crannies of that stadium, so that'll be nice. But yeah, I mean, if they want more attendance and for the Tampa Bay Rays, I'm not sure what the geographical planning of it is and the funding of it is, but it would be best to do it in Tampa Bay. It just seems like there is no possibility of doing that for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there have been ballpark proposals in Tampa, that I guess just got shot down or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the problem's still gonna be there, right? I mean, the Rays still aren't gonna have very good attendance. Um, and even then, like when the team is good, you're only limiting it to 30,000 seats for like a playoff game or something. Like that's not gonna be helpful, come those times. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess it is a plus to be getting out of Tropicana Field. Like, I think that's the one positive way of really looking at this that's kind of indisputable is they're going to be moving into a nicer place. Just generally speaking, like, it'll be more aesthetically pleasing to watch a game or a Rays home game rather. But, ultimately, I think this is covering up the problem by making it less bad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it'll be much change, but I guess, just optimistically speaking, just in general, I know there was something that like Brett Phillips talked about with with what like, people as generations go by, there should be more and more Rays fans because, less there's people our parents' age didn't grow up with the Rays, and even
Hmm.
younger than that didn't grow up with the Rays. And now there are kids and now adults who have grown up with the Rays. So maybe, that sort of comes into fruition and rises attendance because people who grew up around St. Petersburg probably, have rooted for the Rays for a while and are old enough to buy their own tickets. So, I mean, there is that whole, progression there, but that's really the only hope you really have
That's
for
I would say
attendance growing.
that seems like it's I mean, I don't know if there's numbers to back that up. I'm sure there are somewhere, but just going off of feel, like that's not a
Yeah.
definitive way of saying that, hey, this will become better. Um and yeah, I mean it probably doesn't seem like they're too optimistic about that if they're only implementing a 30,000 seat stadium.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
them and them the A's are going to have the lowest uh the lowest capacity stadiums in Major League Baseball because of it.
Yeah,
Which I mean,
exactly.
there's good reason for the A's not to be optimistic about attendance in Las Vegas, obviously.
Right.
And the Rays clearly probably don't feel that either if they're only maxing out at 30,000 a game
Yeah.
and looking at
Very,
that as a success.
yeah, very, very understandable. I mean, anything more on the topic before we get into some of these teams?
No, I mean not really. I mean, well the stadium will open in 2028, so 4 more years of Tropicana Field after the 2023 season wraps up. which is, you could say is a positive way of looking at things. I am very excited to never have to watch a game there ever again, if that means anything. But no, I still can't look at this and think, this is a great situation for the Rays. They're finally, fixing the big problem, because they're not. Like, we're still going to be talking about how the Rays have bad attendance because, fans from Tampa are like don't have an easy way to access the Rays.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And yeah, it is sort of depressing to watch games at Tropicana Field. It just doesn't really feel like a baseball game, especially like a weekday day game. It just doesn't feel right over there. But hopefully it just feels a little bit better even just watching on TV at this new stadium. But yeah, I know they are potentially opening in 2028 because there was a 30-year lease um with Tropicana Field from 1998 to 2027. So it's wrapping up, and then we got a new one. We got a
Yeah.
new one going. So that's fun. But yeah, away from the Rays, who just wrapped up a 4-game series against the Orioles in which they split. They are now 2 games out of the
They're
AL
still two
East.
games out, I guess.
Yep. 2 games out of the AL East. A team that has technically fallen out of the playoff picture. They are 1 game out of that 3rd wild card spot in the American League, and we were very, very high on this team. They were trending fantastically until they weren't. They've had a rough September. Specifically since September 3rd, they have lost 10 out of 14 for a 4-10 record, tied for the worst record in Major League Baseball in this span. And yeah, I mean, it is their playoff odds have gone from about 90% to 53% before the span to in the span, and their odds to win the division have gone from 44% to 15% before and after this span. So yeah, what are you thinking about what this Mariners team has done?
Yeah, the Seattle Mariners, who have, I mean, I think, Chris, it's pretty clear what the issue is. The clubhouse just is not happy that they traded their closer at the trade deadline. They traded Paul Sewald, they traded AJ Pollock. I mean, like, it's pretty clear that, the Mariners selling at the trade deadline has ultimately been the reason for this collapse here in September.
Yeah, and they didn't find out until September 3rd, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why they forgot. They were like, yeah, I think that Seawald guy, he's on like maternity leave or something, but they
Yeah.
found out he got traded, and then they were like, what? Well, we have to lose now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense when you look at it, because their bullpen has actually been the biggest issue in this span. The bullpen has a 4.87 ERA and a 5.75 FIP, and ultimately they have been below replacement overall as a unit at minus -0.2 FWAR. The only reliever that has really been doing well for them in this span is friend of the program, Matt Brash, who, shout out to him, 7 2/3 innings pitched, 11.74 strikeouts per 9, no runs allowed. He's been fantastic, but I mean, they've given 7 innings to Dominic Leone, who's given up 6.43 home runs per 9 in this span. Justin Topa has thrown 8 1/3 innings pitched and has given up multiple home runs, and also has a 4.32 ERA. Taylor Saucedo, he's only thrown 3 1/3 innings, but he has an 8.10 ERA. Gabe Spire has thrown 4 1/3 with an 8.31 ERA. Andres Munoz hasn't been himself. He's pitched 6 innings and he has a 4.50 ERA. They've given time to Luke Weaver in the bullpen. He has a 6.75 ERA now, and I believe he's not even on the team anymore. I'm pretty sure he just started a game for the Yankees, actually. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the innings in the bullpen have gone to guys that have just simply not been effective, whether it be they're walking a lot of guys or just simply giving up a lot of home runs. They're giving up hard contact home runs specifically. It's just been bad all across the board.
Yeah, it's extremely unusual from a Mariners perspective. I think basically since for the last 3 years we've been hyping up the Mariners bullpen as one of the best, and
Mm-hmm.
for good reason. They've been just ERA wise, FIP wise, one of the best bullpens in the game since like the start of 2021, or like since the second half started in 2021, somewhere around there. They just started dominating. But yeah, they have or at least in the last 14 games, the Mariners have the 3rd worst bullpen FIP in baseball. which yeah, it's extremely unusual, and something you don't want for like you think you can rely on that bullpen, but I guess just they're just undergoing a slump just all at the same time. But I don't think it's something either of us are especially concerned about. Like it just seems very abrupt and weird that this is happening and doesn't seem like a long-term trend. As far as other aspects of their team, their offense hasn't been the best. It hasn't been, worst in baseball by any stretch, but in their last 14 games, the Mariners offense has the sixth lowest on base percentage, ninth lowest slugging, and seventh worst OPS. Looking individually there, JP Crawford is hitting 200 with a 617 OPS in the span. Teoscar Hernandez, who was really hot before this, he is hitting 236 with a 604 OPS in this 14 game span. Eugenio Suarez is hitting 184 with a 649 OPS, and Ty France, he is hitting decently, like for contact, but in 52 plate appearances, he has one extra base hit and 0 home runs, which leads to a slugging percentage below 300 in the span. So, their bullpen has not been performing great, but their offense, which is usually like part of the fault of why they don't succeed when they don't succeed, that has also, taken a bit of it's had a bit of a cooling off because they were doing well, but they've had a bit of a cool off in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue throughout the years with the Mariners recently has been the offense. And obviously, during the span where they were winning a lot of games, they were playing, I think, kind of over their head. And maybe they've regressed to the mean. I think they've probably regressed a little below the mean because they have a 94 weighted runs created plus in the month of September. And, this offense isn't necessarily world beaters at best, but, I think they're at least an average team. But Julio Rodriguez has kind of just been carrying the entire offense. I mean, he's had an excellent month of September. He's been one of the best position players throughout the month. And, the rest of the team just really hasn't followed through on that because, Julio is only one guy out of 9 that can hit in the order. But no one else has really followed his lead.
Yeah, it is. We mentioned the offensive struggles, and yeah, that has been none to the fault of Julio Rodriguez, who has kept that hot streak going. Been one of the best players since like the start of August, pretty much, or maybe the best player in baseball since then. So with the Mariners outlooking what they got, I know they are a game. Yeah, they are 2.5 back of the Astros in the division, and they are a game back of, I believe, the Blue Jays in the wild card. Their schedule, like, you could look at it two ways. You could look at it as a way that they're going to, that it's a way that they can leapfrog the Rangers. They have 7 games against the Rangers. So it could be big for them. They could potentially do sort of what the Rangers did to the Blue Jays and, leapfrog them on their own and take matters into their own hands and take over that spot that the Rangers once had. Or, if they split those, if they find a way to sort of split those games with Texas, it might leave them in the same spot. And if they, if they lose those series to Texas, it puts them even further away. So, I mean, 7 games against Texas is going to be, that's going to be huge. Those are going to be like the biggest games to watch when those happen.
Yeah. I mean, they have 3 in Oakland coming up. They have 3 in Oakland coming up this week. And that's kind of, those are kind of the trap games for the rest of the season because, it's the team that should be the easiest to beat. But after this, they have 3 in Texas, 3 at home against the Astros, and then 4 at home against the Rangers. All of those games are must win because they're only 2.5 games out of the division too. Like, getting to the playoffs is obviously what you need to do, but, ultimately you got to go for the division if you can, and they can. So because, the Twins aren't, the greatest team in the world, but if the Mariners win the division, they're very likely getting that first round bye in the playoffs. They're only 2.5 games behind the Astros, like I mentioned. The Twins are probably like 4 or 5 games behind the Astros. So, realistically speaking, winning the division means getting that first round bye and automatically going to the ALDS. And then facing the winner of, I would believe it would be the the 3 versus 6 series, which would be the Twins or whoever is the 6th seed. Might be the Astros, might be the Rangers, might be the Blue Jays.
Right. Yeah. I think you say it perfectly by saying like that West winner is pretty much an automatic 2 seed and an automatic, a series win. You don't have to play that first round of the playoffs,
Yeah, exactly.
which is huge. So yeah, like there's a lot of incentive to win that AL West, to not have to face either the Rays, Orioles, or Twins in that first round of the playoffs. Likely, potentially on the road also, or yeah, very very much most likely on the road, as opposed to playing a home series against one of those potential teams. So yeah, I mean there's a lot of incentive to go for that division, but as I said before a little before we got into this, the Mariners do have only a 15% chance of winning that division according to Fangraphs right now, but those odds change as results change. So if they keep winning, or if they get back on their winning ways, that could definitely change. Yeah, I mean,
Do you think the series against the A's is a must sweep?
that is
I
a
think it has to
good
be, right?
question.
Like, I know that even if you lose one, you could still go 6-1 against the Astros and Rangers and look pretty comfortable. But I mean, those are going to be, 10 really tough games, to end out the year. You want to put yourself in the best position possible going into them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously you want to win every game. The only thing that's making me hesitate on the must sweep thing is I'm looking at these, strength of schedule markers, and the Blue Jays actually have the third hardest strength of schedule remaining,
Mhm.
because they have 6 against Tampa, who are going to be competing. They're going to be trying to win because they want to win that division. And then
Right.
they got 6 against the Yankees, who, they're not
Are looking better.
they're looking better. They're not a gimme team. They're not a typical fourth or fifth place team in
Yeah.
in a division. And also they've been doing well over the past week or so.
I believe they're 14 for the last 20.
Yeah, so like that is not that those aren't gimme series. They got 6 against the Rays, 6 against the Yankees, and probably a split. Like they're probably playing the same amount of home games as they are away games, if those series are so close together. Um, so yeah, I mean, like Toronto does not have any gimme series left. The Mariners seem to have that with the A's.
One.
But yeah, it would, like, yeah, you want to take advantage of that from a Mariners perspective, because
Who do the Rangers have besides the Rangers have the Red Sox coming in today, which is, I mean, they're on a downward spiral, but I wouldn't call them a gimme team because they are slightly below 500, but a team that can play spoiler. And then
they've got the Angels.
okay, well that's the series they should win. The Astros have they have the Orioles coming in today. That's not a gimme by any means. This weekend the Astros have uh who do they have? They have the Royals coming in. That's a gimme, but they did just lose 2 out of 3 to the Royals in Kansas City. So, who knows? And then obviously, the Rangers have, like you mentioned, the Angels. They're going to Anaheim, and then for the last weekend of the year, the Rangers and Mariners are going to play each other. The Astros will have the Diamondbacks. So the Astros really only have one gimme series left, but as we saw this weekend, anything's possible.
Yeah, right. And I mean, the Mariners do have a tough schedule remaining, but just based on these based on winning percentage this year, not necessarily considering team trends and whatnot, out of the Blue Jays, Astros, Rangers, and Mariners, the Mariners actually have the easiest schedule remaining out of those 4 teams. But it's not by much. It's not a crazy amount. They don't have, outside of the A's series, they don't really have any easy series going forward. But they're better off than the Blue Jays. They're slightly better off than the Rangers, and much of what will be determined about this playoff picture could happen with these two Mariners Rangers series coming up. Yeah. So that's what I got on the Mariners so far. Anything more before we get into another team?
No, I mean they have a really exciting end of the season, no doubt. And
Yep.
we're just gonna have to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hopefully for them, they get that bullpen back in check, that offense back in check for these last, what'll it be? 13 games, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So yeah, another team that was riding hot and seemed like kind of a shoo-in to get in the playoffs based on how they were trending and now are not looking like those world beaters are the Chicago Cubs, who have lost 8 of their last 10. They've also lost 5 in a row and have now fallen to a spot where I think they're only a half game up on the next team out of the playoffs. And it's looking a little bit scary over there on the north side. What have you been thinking about the Cubs?
Yeah, not only are they half game up on the first team not in the playoffs, but they're actually tied with the Miami Marlins for that third wild card spot and half a game behind the Arizona Diamondbacks for the second wild card spot. The Diamondbacks just came in and handled business against the Cubs. Give them credit. They won 6 out of the 7 games that they played, throughout the 2 weekends in a row, or the however long it was between those 2 series. But the Diamondbacks came in and handled their business against the Cubs, did what they needed to do. And it's now kind of, it's leaving the Cubs in a situation where they're going to have to fight more than it looked like they had to a week and a half ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Like their playoff odds have cut in half according to Fangraphs before this 10-game stretch and after this 10-game stretch. They were at a 92% chance to make the playoffs about 2 weeks ago, or even just a week and a half ago, and also 33% chance to win the division. And now they have a 46% chance to make the playoffs and a 1% chance to win the division. That's kind of out of sight, out of mind. They just want to make the playoffs at this point. And yeah, it's been rough. Like, and those were 2 important series against the Arizona Diamondbacks where, they had a chance to, increase their lead on the Diamondbacks and, they're competing against with the Cubs. They're competing against like 4 other teams right now, and the Giants, the Diamondbacks. I got a spam caller. The Giants, the Diamondbacks, the Reds, and the Marlins. Like they're competing against pretty much all those teams, and so to lose 6 out of 7 to the Diamondbacks is it's a real detriment to them, and really messes them up in the standings a little bit.
Yeah, so kind of just looking at going forward, I know you had some numbers on the Cubs, Chris, but they have a very crucial week ahead of them because they're home against the Pirates for 3 and then home against the Rockies for 3, which they did just lose 2 out of 3 to the Rockies at Coors, but I mean, we know the Rockies generally tend to be a different team on the road, so that's something that the Cubs could take advantage of. But after that, they have 2 non-contending teams coming to Wrigley. But after that, they go to Atlanta for 3, and then they go to Milwaukee for 3 to finish out the season. Those are 2 division-winning teams. The Brewers, very likely. The Braves have obviously already clinched, but they can only hope that the Braves are in, post-clinch the number 1 seed mode at that point. They probably won't be. Because the Dodgers just swept this weekend, so they're still in there. And the Brewers, they will likely have clinched the NL Central by then, but still, that's a team that's going to want to win if it means eliminating the Cubs from the playoffs potentially. So they have some games coming up where they really need to get hot at the right time.
Yeah, for sure. And what they want to do is get better on offense, because that has been a large part of their problem in their last 10 games, which has caused them to lose 8 of those games, which, by the way, is tied for the worst record in baseball in the span. In their last 10 games, they have the lowest runs per game in the span. And they also, it's not necessarily a matter of them not getting on base. It's when they do get on base, they don't really execute. The Cubs have the lowest slugging percentage with runners on base in their last 10 games. Their 2 home runs with runners on base are tied for the fewest, and their 2 doubles are also the fewest. And it's weird to identify to this detail, but I think this is part of why they aren't scoring runs. So they've hit 8 home runs in the last 10 games, just a little bit below average, but those 8 overall home runs in their last 10 games have only driven in 10 runs, which is 1.25 runs per home run. And I was looking before the show, and I think the average home run drives in like 1.6 runs. So all in all, like when runners are on base, they're not really, executing. They're not coming through with those, big splashes, like the doubles that drive in the runner from first, or the 3-run home run. They haven't had a single 3-run home run or grand slam in the span. Everything has been either solo or 2-run shot, and they only have two 2-run home runs. They have 6 solo home runs. So they're not necessarily, it's a lot of a matter of timing, which seems a little bit more fixable than if they were striking out a bunch or popping the ball up a bunch or grounding out a bunch. It just seems like a matter of timing. So they gotta really come through in the big moments in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. So I want to look more into this NL wild card and kind of what's coming up for every team. So there are really 5 teams that are in line for those final 2 spots. It's the Diamondbacks, the Cubs, the Marlins, the Reds, and the San Francisco Giants. And then the Padres are 6 games out, but let's not talk about them right now because, I mean, it would take a lot for them to even be in the picture. So the Cubs' remaining schedule, I already talked about. It's the Pirates coming into Wrigley, the Rockies coming into Wrigley, and they go on the road to Atlanta and Milwaukee. Miami, who is tied with the Cubs. They have an interesting schedule. They just swept the Braves. Not only did they sweep the Braves, but they demolished them. They won 9-6, 11-5, and then 16-2. Which I know it's the post clinch Braves, but you got to understand how much the Braves just have perpetually owned the Marlins for the last 5 years. In the span where they've been a perennial World Series contender. To sweep that Braves team at home, it means something. And they have the Mets coming in this week for 3, and then they have the Brewers coming in for 3, which, say what you want about the Mets, but they're a team that's perfectly capable of playing spoiler. The Brewers will obviously be competitive in those games because they'll be going to clinch. And they also just took 3 out of 4 from the Marlins in Milwaukee recently. And then they go to New York for 3, and then they finish out the season in Pittsburgh for 3. The Diamondbacks, who are, currently in a playoff spot, they have 2 against the Giants at home. And they go on the road to face the Yankees. They go on the road to face the White Sox, and they finish out, as I mentioned, at home against the Astros. So, only one real gimme series there with the White Sox going into Chicago, and then some competitive teams, 2 of which will be in the playoffs. The San Francisco Giants that I mentioned earlier, they will be obviously going to Arizona for 2. And then they go to LA for 4 to face the Dodgers. And they host the Padres for 3, and then they face the Dodgers for 3. So the Giants probably have the toughest schedule. I wouldn't call any of those teams a gimme. And then the last team that I have to mention here is the Cincinnati Reds, that are half a game behind both the Cubs and the Marlins. They host the Twins for 3 starting today. They host the Pirates for 3 this weekend, and they go on the road to Cleveland to face the Guardians in 2 games, and they go on the road to face the Cardinals for 3. Out of those schedules, Chris, which team would you want to be the most going forward?
So according to the winning percentage numbers that Tankathon has going for me, the Reds among these teams has the easiest strength of schedule,
which I would believe. The Guardians or the Twins are the best team, but after that, it's the Guardians.
Yeah, I like that. That just seems like logically, even if you took winning percentage away from it and just told me those 4 teams like you just did, I would just go with that. Like St. Louis and Pittsburgh, they are not really competing. The Twins are pretty comfortable in their spot and don't have too much to compete for. So I think they'll still try to win, but they're not. They'll give some guys some days off, most likely, that need them. Probably won't extend their starting pitchers too much. And then the Guardians are also not really competing for much of a spot. Whereas, yeah, the Diamondbacks, like they have some teams that have some, have some things to play for, like the Astros and the Giants, and even the Yankees haven't been bad over time. I would at least want to be the Giants, because the Giants have the second hardest strength of schedule remaining in baseball, not even among these teams. Of all 30 teams in baseball, Giants have the second hardest strength of schedule remaining, mostly because they faced the Dodgers, 7 times. So
Yeah.
I'd most want to be the Reds. That's why, going back to the Cubs, that's why this next week is crucial for them to win a lot of games, because they got the Rockies and Pirates coming up. So they want to, take advantage of that as much as they can.
I think the thing that worries me the most about the Reds is not the teams that they have coming in, but the players they have right now on the field. If you look at their rotation, right now it's Andrew Abbott, Hunter Green, Brandon Williamson, and Ben Lively. They don't even really have a fifth starter, and they haven't even announced a starting pitcher for today's game. That's not a situation that you want to be in going into the playoffs, because Graham Ashcraft just had season-ending surgery, I believe. Nick Lodolo will not be coming back this year, most likely. There's a lot of concerning things going on with this team, specifically in the rotation. I don't know how much I love that in a playoff series, especially because Hunter Green has also been struggling lately, and that's kind of the one name that really pops out. Because of that, they're going to rely a lot on Andrew Abbott going forward, who, I'm not going to, no disrespect to him, but he is a rookie, and there are naturally going to be questions about how capable he is of leading a rotation.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a complete correct thing. I think the only counter to that is the Reds just in general have made 0 sense all year.
Yes.
So like why is it gonna why is it gonna stay that way in the playoffs? Like I don't know how they win games. I don't know who any of these guys are. I don't know what they do. I don't even know, like, well, I don't know what's going on with this team. I don't know how they've been able to do it. So I mean, it just keeps going on that way. I feel like that's been the Rays MO for some time. At least they've had some more organization to their wins, but like when the Rays won 100 games, it was like they had like 2 starters. Like I don't know what the Reds are doing, but they win for some reason, and I don't know. In the instance where they take the 6th seed and they have to face the Brewers, like, yeah, I'm obviously probably going to take the Brewers, but
how come they find a way to win Game 3 when it's Freddie Peralta versus Brandon Williamson?
Yeah, they could. Some weird stuff will happen. I don't know.
Like the winner go home Game 3. Going back to Hunter Green real quick, over his last 5 starts since coming off the IL, he has a 6.08 ERA and a 6.01 FIP. That's kind of the one, guy that they feel like they should be able to depend on. But I don't think you can really say that. Andrew Abbott's continued to be fine. Going back to his last few starts, he overall this year has a 3.68 ERA, a 4.11 FIP, which isn't great, but that is, all that stuff kind of goes out the window in the playoffs. I mean, you can use it to forecast what you think will happen. But I will say he hasn't been as fantastic recently, because over his last 8 starts, he has a 5.97 ERA and a 4.48 FIP.
And who's this again?
Andrew Abbott.
Yeah, right.
Right now there just isn't really a one starting pitcher that the Reds can depend on. Which, I think that will hinder them trying to get to the playoffs, but at the very least, we have the easiness of being able to say, well, they have not a lot of great teams going forward. The only good team really they have is the Twins coming in for 3 this week.
Yeah, I really, I like what they have ahead of them, from their perspective. And yeah, I mean, that rotation will probably, the lack of pieces there will probably have more emphasis, when the playoffs come around, for sure, because of, they're going to be facing the best guys. So they want the best guys out there, and their guys aren't necessarily the best guys. But in terms of getting there, I do like their schedule. I think I like the Cubs' talent a little bit more. I don't really like anything with it as far as the Giants go, whether it be schedule or talent or position in the standings, because they're already 2 games out of a playoff spot. And then the Marlins, yeah, I don't know. The Marlins are similar to the Reds in that they just kind of find ways in whatever way they can. Um, yeah, anything more on
I
the
really hope we get some like playoff vibes in Miami this week. Side note, this weekend, because in the like Lone Depot Park era, this is probably the best Marlins team that we've seen, or and definitely the most important games that we've seen. Because like I know 2020 they made the playoffs, but that didn't count. Like let's be honest here.
yeah,
They finished under 500 and finished second in a bad division. Um, so I really hope we see a lot of fans in Miami this weekend, and we hear, especially because like they have like I said, I know they only just beat the post clinch Braves, and that series probably didn't mean a lot for Atlanta, but that's going to give the Marlins some momentum going forward. Jazz Chisholm has been the face of that franchise for a while, and he's looked really good over the last couple of weeks. Um, if he can really stand out and be the face of the franchise that he has to be this week, like that's gonna be huge for this team because, like I said, you know, they just lost Sandy Alcantara, they just lost Jorge Soler, but they look really good still, and it doesn't make any sense, but that is how they look.
yeah, and it seems like they have enough just supplemental rotation pieces that are just working for them. Like Yuri Perez, Braxton Garrett, Jesus Luzardo, probably most notably there.
Mhm.
Along with even like I think is Edward Cabrera still starting games for them right now?
He's starting tonight.
Yeah, so you have that going for you. And yeah, I mean the deadline acquisitions have looked pretty good with Josh Bell and Jake Berger. Like the Jake Berger addition has played a great factor for them. He's been a great spark plug for their offense. Yeah, they have
Jorge
more. They
Soler off
have
the
some
IL.
momentum riding with them, so that's pretty nice. Anything more on the wild card race here?
Real quick, it looks like Jorge Soler is off the IL.
Woo!
That he
That's
played
fun.
yesterday. So that's big. That's big for them. That's he's a guy that has mashed lefties specifically this year. So if there's a lefty on the mound, Jorge Soler is probably going to do some damage.
Yeah, it'll be fun to keep eyes on everything going forward, and I hope it doesn't just end in
Yeah, Jorge
whichever
Soler came off.
team.
Jorge Soler came off the IL yesterday and went 2 for 3
I just
with a
hope this
walk.
doesn't end in two game sweeps
Oh God, that
in the
would
wild
suck.
card round.
Yeah.
Like all this drama and none of these teams succeed. It's just the Phillies and the Brewers
Yep.
just moving on. So yeah, that anything more on the wild card race?
I think that's kind of it.
All right. Well, now we will get into the part we've most prepared for, which is our players to highlight, starting with the good. And that's where we will start with our Monday, September 18, 2023 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
Turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
He is getting a
How about that?
So for my How About That, I'm using the same team for the second show in a row. And I'm talking about Jorge Polanco from the Minnesota Twins. Going back to August 25th, he is slashing 324, 427, 603 for a 1030 OPS and a 182 weighted runs created plus. And he has the most beautiful batted ball profile I've ever seen in this span. His ground ball rate since August 25th is just 16%. That is the lowest of the 148 hitters with at least 50 batted balls in this span, and the second lowest is 21%. So his ground ball rate is 5% lower than the next lowest. His line drive rate in this span is 36%. He is tied for the highest line drive rate in baseball during that same span. And he also has a 40% fly ball rate, which is tied for the third highest. So again, the lowest ground ball rate, the highest line drive rate, and the third highest fly ball rate. It really does not get much better than that. And his average exit velocity on fly balls is 95 miles per hour, which means that he's also hitting his fly balls hard and getting results on them. 20% of his total batted balls have been fly balls with an exit velo of at least 100 miles per hour. That is the highest rate in all of baseball. And also in the span, his 50% sweet spot rate is third highest in the majors, and his 18% barrel rate is the sixth highest. And also throughout this season, he has a 4.9 run value per 100 against changeups on 46 plate appearances, which means that for every 100 changeups he sees, he's producing just under 5 runs, which is a lot. That is tied for the 8th highest among the 326 hitters with at least 25 plate appearances ending against changeups. And also he has a 395 average on changeups, which is the 7th highest, and he also has a 558 slugging and a 417 WOBA. So Jorge Polanco has had one of the best batted ball profiles I think that I've ever covered in a How About That, and he's also matching against changeups as he's been the whole season.
Yeah, Jorge Polanco.
How about that?
Yeah, having half your batted balls in the sweet spot zone is always a plus. Always a plus. And he's getting the proper results for it, which is nice. My How About That, rarely does this happen. We highlight a team for negative reasons, but we do a How About That on that team. Because we mentioned the Cubs are struggling, but that has not been to the fault of Seiya Suzuki, who has been doing well for over a month now, doing really well. He, in his last 36 games, is hitting 343 with a 1075 OPS. And out of 168 qualifiers in this span, Suzuki's average ranks 6th, slugging ranks 4th, and OPS ranks 5th. And also just overall, his F-WAR ranks 7th in this span. So he's been a top 7 player in baseball, according to Fangraphs wins above replacement. Along with that, out of 113 hitters with 500 plus pitches in the span, his expected batting average ranks 5th, and expected slugging and expected WOBA rank 7th. So his expected numbers are pretty much on par with his actual numbers, his actual results. Seiya Suzuki's strikeout rate has gone from 25% before the span to 16% in the span. That is a major difference, which is causing a lot of the increases in batting average and other offensive marks. And part of that has to do with him swinging and missing less. His whiff rate has gone from 23% before the span to 18% in the span. And out of 99 hitters with 250 plus swings in the span, his whiff rate is the 16th lowest. And what he was already doing well, he's continuing to do well. His line drive rate is 29% in the span, and out of 68 hitters with 100 plus batted balls in the span, his line drive rate ranks 10th. And his sweet spot rate has gone from 33% before the span to 41% in the span, and out of 68 hitters, his sweet spot rate ranks 5th. So he is, hitting line drives and hitting fly balls at a good rate, and particularly like lower fly balls that get better results and not ones that hang up, because it's in that 8 to 32 degree launch angle zone. And along with that, Seiya Suzuki's barrel rate has gone from 9% to 13%, and that barrel rate ranks 11th out of 68. So yeah, Seiya Suzuki has been very consistently for the last month plus, just producing very well, getting on base at a good rate, slugging at a good rate, getting good barrels, getting line drives, hitting balls in the sweet spot, and most importantly, making more contact and striking out less. So just overall, from all fronts, Seiya Suzuki is definitely earning a
How about that?
And that shall do it for How About That. And now we will go from the highs to the lows, where we are talking players and subjects that have been underperforming with our Monday, September 18, 2023 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats, he's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting a
Slightly alarming.
Yeah, so for my slightly alarming today, I know a lot of people have kind of been talking about this for a while, and I think it's our turn to do so. I am talking about Ellie De La Cruz, of course, from the Cincinnati Reds. In the second half of the season, he is slashing 184, 266, 360, 336, excuse me, for a 602 OPS and a 55 weighted runs created plus. That weighted runs created plus is the second lowest among the 148 qualifiers in this span, which, by the way, the lowest weighted runs created plus is Brenton Doyle at 18, because for whatever reason the Rockies just keep giving him plate appearances. And again, he's the lowest at 18. Ellie De La Cruz is second lowest at 55. His 35.7% strikeout rate in the span is the third worst. And also throughout his span, 37.6% of all pitches thrown to Ellie De La Cruz have been in game day zones 13 and 14, which means they are on the lower part of not the strike zone, inside and outside. So either, it's either low and outside, low and inside, or just below the strike zone. And that's been 37.6% of all total pitches. And that is the 15th highest rate among the 132 hitters with at least 750 total pitches seen. And what that says is that the league has started to figure out how to pitch to Ellie De La Cruz. They understand that he's going to swing a lot at pitches outside the zone, and he's done that. He's swung at 35% of such pitches. That is 5% above the MLB average. Throughout the span, 42.2% of his total batted balls have been 0 degrees or lower, the 16th highest rate among the 220 hitters with at least 100 batted balls. So Ellie De La Cruz is chasing a lot. He's hitting the ball on the ground a lot, which, it is good that he has the highest sprint speed in the majors, so he can at least hit pretty well on ground balls. But, when you're hitting the ball on the ground as often as he is, speed is only going to get you so far with general production. And, I talked about Jazz Chisholm really coming to age and being the face of the Marlins and coming through in these next 2 weeks. Ellie De La Cruz has kind of become the face of the Reds, and it's largely on him to be the guy that steps up in these next 2 weeks in the Reds playoff push.
Yeah, Ellie De La Cruz.
Slightly alarming.
Yeah, and yeah, when you ground the ball and you're fast, you can, do a little bit better, but also you max out at a single. You're not gonna, usually there isn't a double or triple opportunity from ground balls. It's usually
it's cool when, over the course of 2 months he hits, 7 more infield singles that would have been outs. It's not gonna do a lot.
Right, exactly. It's seven more total bases.
Mm-hmm.
My slightly alarming is coming out of it. This is maybe the longest sample I've used for slightly alarming. So the changes I reference aren't going to be too extreme, but just in general, he's been doing pretty poor for most of the year. And I'm talking about Jeff McNeil, who I think he got an extension before the season started, I believe. But unfortunately, in his last 119 games, dating back to almost the beginning of May, he is hitting 255 with a 655 OPS. And out of 135 qualifiers in this span, Jeff McNeil's slugging and OPS rank 7th lowest. And out of 129 hitters to see 1,500 plus pitches in the span, Jeff McNeil's expected slugging is 4th lowest, and expected WOBA is 6th lowest. So he actually ranks worst in the expected categories than the actual number categories. Overall, from last year to this year, his line drive rate has gone from 30% to 26%. His line drive rate on fastballs particularly have gone from 30% to 24%. His sweet spot rate has gone from 39% last year to 32% this year. And his pop-up rate, probably most alarmingly, has gone from 6% to 10%. He has the 5th most pop-ups in baseball this year, Jeff McNeil does. So, not typical, not what you want from a high batting average guy. He's made a career off of hitting line drives and hitting balls in the sweet spot zone to get, those singles and doubles to, get on base and set up runs for the Mets. But he hasn't really done that this year, noted by a 655 OPS in his last 119 games. and yeah, something just for next year that the Mets hope improves. And yeah, it's just been rough for the last, basically since the start of May for Jeff McNeil, and he's getting a
Slightly alarming.
So that shall do it for players to highlight. And now we will get into a preview of the week ahead, where I will be highlighting series to watch. Daniel will be looking at the day-by-day pitching matchups. And as far as series to watch, I mean, anyone that's competing for his playoff spot is, it's something to watch, because they, it's crunch time, and those races are really heating up at this point in the year. But to highlight a few certain series, we have Diamondbacks Giants, which will be happening in Arizona. Diamondbacks have built a little bit of a lead for themselves. The Giants are sort of hanging on to their, playoff odds by a thread, and really need to get these games. So something to watch out for at Chase Field. That starts tomorrow. That starts on Tuesday, I believe. Yeah. Along with that, we have the
Twins and Reds.
Twins Reds. I think that's 2 games. So
pretty sure
something
it's
to
3.
watch there. And
it's 3.
the premier series to watch is the Astros and the Orioles, which the Astros are, both teams are in very tight races for their division. Both divisions right now are within 2 games. So that is a big series that's going to be at Minute Maid Park, and this potentially, this could be a playoff series. This could be a 4 versus 5. This could be an ALCS. Who knows? These are 2 of the best teams in the American League, arguably the 2 best teams in the American League. Although the Rays would have something to say about that. But that's the premier series to watch. I'll definitely have my eyes on it. What do you got for the day-by-day pitching matchups?
Yeah, I mean, the Astros and Orioles is interesting because I think it's a measuring stick for both teams, right? I mean, the Orioles, they might be the number 1 seed, but they got to face the perennial best team. The Astros haven't been themselves, but we got to see, if there's still a threat in these playoffs. I think tonight's not going to be the greatest because the Orioles are probably going to be using their post-clinch lineup, right? I mean, they just clinched the playoffs yesterday. So who knows what they go with tonight, but they are still fighting for the division. So they'll probably field their best team, but we'll have to see how they're feeling after yesterday. But today rather, you have Cal Quantrill and Brady Singer facing each other in Guardians Royals. That game is the only afternoon game today. It kicks off at 2:10, so I'm sure some sickos will be watching that one, even though there's virtually nothing at stake for either team here. Joe Ryan will be facing the Reds for the Twins in Cincinnati. As I mentioned earlier, the Reds have not announced their starter for tonight. Edward Cabrera will be facing the Mets for the Marlins at Lone Depot Park. Zach Wheeler and Kyle Wright will face each other in Phillies Braves. That one is in Atlanta. Freddie Peralta pitches tonight for the Brewers against the Cardinals in St. Louis, where Adam Wainwright will be chasing his 200th career win. It'll be his first shot at it after he won 199 last week. Cutter Crawford and Jordan Montgomery will face each other in Red Sox Rangers at Globe Life Field. Brian Wu will be facing the A's for the Mariners tonight in Oakland. Eduardo Rodriguez and Lance Lynn will be facing each other in Tigers Dodgers. Erod will be facing his former future team for about, they were his former future team for about 10 minutes before he decided they weren't going to be his future team. And matchup of the night does come from Orioles Astros. I'm looking at John Means versus Justin Verlander.
Nice one.
It is very cool that the Orioles are getting John Means back just in time for this division push. Maybe he'll be in their playoff rotation. But we will have to see. On Tuesday, we have Patrick Sandoval and Taj Bradley facing each other in Angels and Rays. Kenta Maeda will be facing the Reds for the Twins. You will have Braxton Garrett pitching for the Marlins against the Mets. Yusei Kikuchi will be facing the Yankees for the Blue Jays in New York. Let's see. Nathan Eovaldi will be facing the Red Sox, his former team in Texas, for the Rangers. Hunter Brown will be facing the Orioles for the Astros. Blake Snell will be facing the Rockies for the Padres, looking to potentially wrap up the Cy Young race because Justin Steele had a tough outing in his last time out. Luis Castillo will be facing the A's for the Mariners, and Zach Gallen will be facing the Giants for the Diamondbacks. And matchup of the night comes from Phillies Braves. It's Christopher Sanchez versus Spencer Strider.
Yeah, didn't that matchup happen very recently?
It might have. Yeah, I think
I
it
think
did.
I think that was a matchup of the night, like
The day
on
that I
last.
highlighted Christopher Sanchez on How About That.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on Wednesday, Bailey Ober will be facing the Reds for the Twins. You will have Brian Bayo and John Gray facing each other in Red Sox and Rangers. Lucas Giolito and Zach Greinke facing each other in the Guardians Royals, which means Lucas Giolito will pitch a gem because the Royals do not score for Zach Greinke at all. Which I recently learned. George Kirby will be facing the A's for the Mariners in Oakland to wrap up that series. Merrill Kelly will be facing the Giants for the Diamondbacks. Aaron Savali will be facing the Angels for the Rays, and Kodai Senga will be facing the Marlins for the Mets. Kevin Gausman and Michael King will face each other in Blue Jays Yankees. And Reese Olson and Bobby Miller will face each other in Tigers and Dodgers. And matchup of the afternoon comes from Phillies Braves. It is Aaron Nola versus Bryce Elder.
Yeah, that's grounders and some strikeouts as well.
Yeah, and some Bibbery on the Braves side.
Yep. Be prepared for some ground balls to sneak through, and
yep.
probably
And I don't think anything is announced on Thursday, although we could check. I don't know if anything is really announced. Jose Barrios versus Garrett Cole is pretty cool. Blue Jays Yankees. That's about it.
Yeah, that's a fun one. That's a good pitching ninja matchup.
Yep.
Yeah, so that'll do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoy this one. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, check out all the features, our shorts, our playlists, our guest interviews with most recently with Chris Cotillo, who before the Chaim Bloom firing talked about, sort of the Chaim Bloom era and everything that's been happening with the Red Sox organization for, even since 2018 when he started being a beat reporter for them. So check that one out. Also go to our social medias. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Giant. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball once again. See you then.
This conversation is over.